Okay, so quick video here, maybe. And I want to maybe sort of point out or show an example of the difference of the typical MBTI assessment, sort of remotely trying to type somebody by watching interviews and whatnot. And by looking at, okay, here they're showing this trait, and they're showing this trait, and they're showing this trait. And so therefore, when you sort of piece them all together, here's the type that you're going to get, right? Here's them showing extroverted feeling, and here's them showing introverted thinking, and here's them showing extroverted sensing, and here's them showing introverted intuition, and you piece it all together, and you have an INFJ. And there's a video out there that was doing this with the actress Zendaya, and made a very compelling case that she comes across as an INFJ when you sort of approach it that way, right? You can find lots of examples of her with very, very strong extroverted feeling, and some examples of introverted thinking, and of course examples of extroverted sensing and introverted intuition. And like I said, it was a pretty compelling case. So I wanted to see, hey, can I find an example of her showing polar TE, right? So this is going off the theme of the theme of the week of, of testing people by trying to find their polar function and working from there, as opposed to trying to find their dominant functions or, their four front stack functions and making a case that way. And so I went and looked at some of her interviews, and I was trying to find examples of her being kind of self-critical or self-deprecating, where she sort of criticizes herself, about her inability to do something TE or something, just to try to, hone in on that. And what I found was actually quite the opposite, I think. And well, not exactly the opposite, but different. So I'm gonna play a segment out of a video, and this is one of these Vanity Fair interviews where they just ask a series of questions, like 30 questions or something, to celebrities, as a sort of get to know you type of interview. And what I noticed during the course of the video is that there are a bunch of FI questions, and I invite you to go back and watch the video. It's pretty easy to find, Zendaya Vanity Fair. And there's just these series of FI questions, a lot of FI questions, and I could tell through the course of the interview she didn't want to answer the questions. She kept sort of changing the questions so that she could give her own answer. And part of it was her trying to be political and not express, maybe something that might be an unpopular opinion or something like that, and just trying to keep things neutral. But you could tell as the questions went on, she was getting more and more frustrated with the questions because it really just kept tapping into her FI, and you could tell she wasn't comfortable answering all these FI questions. And I think it was more than just her trying to be political and trying to avoid giving an answer that would, upset half of the population or something. There might have been a little bit of that, but I think it was more of it just kept prodding her FI, and she was getting uncomfortable with it. And so then they do this reflections part at the end, which I think is really telling. And I'm going to play it for you and, see what you think. And again, look at it from a polar perspective. What do you think her polar function might be here?
How was that?
How was it? Actually stressful. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's really hard for me to pick one thing. Like, I don't have a favorite movie. I don't have a favorite color. I don't have a favorite food. I never have. Like, my whole life, I never was like, oh, this is my favorite color. Or, this is my favorite food as a kid. It's kind of a personality trait of mine, is the inability to quite specifically choose anything.
Which
Well, there you go, right? A personality trait of hers. I mean, she even, says it herself, right? Without anybody, without, I'm presuming she doesn't, follow all this polar MBTI stuff, cognitive function stuff. And without any prodding or anything, like that was just her natural reaction. It's this personality type of mine where I really don't have preferences on things like favorite food, favorite color, et cetera, et cetera. So, pretty compelling case, in my opinion, for FI polar. I mean, you could probably make arguments that maybe it's inferior FI or maybe it's, 6 slot FI and she's still an INFJ. But I would sort of compare how I would react, to how she reacted. And she was a little bit more definitive about, not liking the FI stuff. And also, you can just, again, tell that she got really frustrated through the series of questions as they progressed. So where does that leave us? Either an ENTP or an ESTP. I think there's a strong case for ESTP. Another thing she kept doing is sort of correcting the question in a very TI kind of way, like, would it be more accurate? And that's what the other video pointed out too, that she was doing that. And I think that's right. I think that is an example of her using TI. So all the same cognitive functions, extroverted sensing, introverted thinking, extroverted feeling, introverted intuition, but in a different order and coming out with a very different personality type. So again, the original video had her tagged as an INFJ. Here I'm thinking ESTP, and it doesn't negate what the original video said because they're just going function by function and saying, look, it's pretty clear she uses NI. It's pretty clear she uses FE. It's pretty clear she uses TI. And that's all true. It's just maybe the order is a little different. And you can sort of fine tune it a little bit more, perhaps, by looking at this polar function as opposed to just sort of assuming, oh, well, I got the 4 functions and she kind of seems INFJ to me, so let's call her an INFJ. So just interesting thing that I noticed. Be interested in your comments and go from there. Okay, thanks. See you next time.